There is a dangerous illusion in modern life, the belief that constant connection equals strength. We are told, subtly and overtly, that visibility is power, and that influence is measured by how many people surround us at all times. Social platforms amplify this narrative, rewarding noise, presence, and reaction. We are conditioned to believe that if the room is quiet when we enter, we lack importance. If our phone is not vibrating, we lack relevance. But this is a shallow interpretation of power. Real power is not frantic, nor is it desperate for witnesses. It does not require applause to validate its existence. Power, as understood by thinkers like Niccolò Machiavelli and the Prince, is calculated, measured, and disciplined. The prince who survives is not the one adored by the loudest crowd, but the one who understands that proximity always carries a price. Company is influence, and influence subtly shapes thought patterns. Thought, over time, determines destiny. To choose solitude over low-value company is not arrogance or superiority. It is strategic self-preservation. It is the recognition that your mental and emotional energy are forms of currency. And like all currency, once spent carelessly, they are difficult to recover. Low-value company is not defined by external markers such as wealth, social status, or academic degrees. It is defined by mindset and orientation toward growth. It is the friend who feels threatened by your ambition and disguises envy as humor. It is the colleague who thrives on gossip rather than contribution. It is the associate who mocks discipline because it exposes their own lack of it. Psychologically, human beings are adaptive creatures. We unconsciously synchronize with the emotional climate around us. If negativity dominates a room, your mood will gradually reflect it. If complacency is normalized, your urgency will slowly fade. This process is subtle and often invisible until damage has already been done. Machiavellian awareness begins with acknowledging this uncomfortable truth. Proximity is programming. The standards you tolerate become the standards you internalize. If you accept chaos, excuses, and mediocrity as normal in your immediate circle, you eventually authorize them within yourself. The influence of environment is not loud or dramatic. It is incremental and therefore dangerous. Solitude, in contrast, is deeply misunderstood. Society often equates being alone with being rejected, bitter, or socially inadequate. But there is a vast difference between involuntary isolation and deliberate withdrawal. Solitude is chosen. It is intentional space carved out to preserve clarity. It is not the absence of people, it is the absence of distraction. Philosophically, solitude restores sovereignty over one's internal world. When you are alone, you are not reacting to the expectations, insecurities, or opinions of others. You are thinking without interruption. Your ideas are allowed to breathe and mature without being diluted by commentary. In solitude, you see your weaknesses without needing to defend them. You evaluate your ambitions without fear of mockery. You examine your strategy without performing for validation. This is the environment in which self-command is forged. The ability to sit alone without craving distraction is evidence of psychological strength. Solitude is not emptiness. It is refinement. It is the controlled environment where power consolidates quietly before it expresses itself outwardly. Machiavelli observed that rulers often fell not because of obvious enemies, but because of poorly chosen allies. The threat was not always at the gates. Sometimes it sat at the table. In The Prince, he warned that advisors reflect the judgment of the ruler who selects them. A leader surrounded by fools signals his own lack of discernment. This principle transcends politics and applies directly to personal life. Your inner circle is a mirror of your standards. If your companions are reckless, you are perceived as reckless by association. If your closest confidants lack discipline, your own authority is subtly weakened. Human beings rarely evaluate individuals in isolation, they assess context. Cutting off fools is not cruelty, it is clarity. It is the recognition that loyalty without wisdom is a liability. When you distance yourself from destructive influences, you are not declaring superiority. You are declaring responsibility. Responsibility for your direction, your reputation, and your long-term stability. Association is never neutral. It either fortifies your position or destabilizes it. Psychologically, low-value individuals often operate on impulse rather than intention. Their decisions are driven by immediate gratification rather than long-term outcomes. They prioritize entertainment over growth, validation over competence, comfort over discipline. Their conversations revolve around complaints, trivial drama, and fleeting distractions. Exposure to this pattern has cumulative effects. The human brain has limited cognitive resources. When those resources are repeatedly consumed by defending boundaries, filtering nonsense, or absorbing negativity, less energy remains for creative thought and strategic planning. Over time, this drain becomes a silent tax on ambition. You may not notice it immediately, but you will feel its consequences in diminished focus and weakened resolve. Instead of refining skills or building vision, you are unconsciously managing emotional turbulence. This constant low-level friction erodes discipline. It shifts attention from what builds your future to what merely fills your present. And that shift, repeated daily, can redirect the trajectory of your entire life without a single dramatic event. There is also the matter of perception, which Machiavelli treated as central to maintaining authority. Reputation is not a superficial concern. It is strategic currency. To be respected, one must appear deliberate, composed, and discerning. When you associate openly with those who lack direction or integrity, your image absorbs their flaws. Fair or not, society judges collectively. People rarely dissect your character independently of your companions. Instead, they observe patterns. If your circle is chaotic, they assume you tolerate chaos. If your circle lacks ambition, they assume you lack it as well. Power is not built on fairness, it is built on understanding how reality functions. By choosing your company carefully, you shape the narrative surrounding you. You communicate standards without making speeches. Silence combined with selective association speaks louder than declarations of discipline. Protecting your reputation requires vigilance. It demands that you recognize how easily perception can be diluted through careless proximity. Solitude strengthens discernment in ways constant social engagement cannot. When you distance yourself from endless conversation and background noise, your perception sharpens. Patterns become visible. You begin to notice who contributes genuine value and who merely consumes attention. Subtle forms of manipulation, envy, or incompetence reveal themselves more clearly in silence than in distraction. Solitude heightens intuition because it removes competing signals. In a crowded environment, the mind is overstimulated, reacting to countless inputs. Alone, those inputs disappear, allowing your deeper instincts to surface. Strategic thinking requires this clarity. It requires uninterrupted analysis and reflection. When you regularly practice solitude, you develop the ability to evaluate relationships objectively rather than emotionally. You see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. This capacity to perceive accurately is a form of power. In a noisy world, the individual who can retreat, reflect, and return with sharper judgment holds an undeniable advantage. Cutting people off requires emotional discipline that many underestimate. It is not merely a logistical decision. It is a psychological confrontation with guilt, habit, and fear. Many individuals tolerate low-value company not because they are unaware of its impact, but because separation feels uncomfortable. They fear appearing cold, arrogant, or ungrateful. They confuse constant accessibility with kindness. Yet there is a difference between compassion and self-neglect. Selective withdrawal is not an act of hostility. It is an act of stewardship over your time and mental clarity. Strategic thinkers throughout history understood that generosity must be measured. Even Niccolò Machiavelli emphasized that a ruler's mercy, when misplaced, could destabilize his authority. In personal life, unrestricted access to your energy invites erosion. Time is finite. Attention is sacred. Every hour spent entertaining triviality is an hour removed from deliberate growth. To protect your focus is not selfish. It is intelligent resource management. Emotional discipline means accepting temporary discomfort in exchange for long-term alignment. Consider how environments shape identity at a subconscious level. In psychology, the principle of social proof demonstrates that individuals adjust beliefs and behaviors based on group norms. If your immediate circle normalizes procrastination, urgency feels excessive. If your group mocks ambition, striving feels socially risky. Humans possess an innate desire for belonging, and to maintain it, they often shrink themselves. This is rarely a dramatic surrender of dreams. It is subtle compromise, lowering standards slightly, laughing at jokes that undermine your values, softening your discipline to avoid appearing extreme. Over time, these minor adjustments accumulate into a different identity. Potential suffocates quietly. You begin to internalize the room's expectations rather than your own aspirations. Machiavellian awareness recognizes this dynamic as dangerous. Proximity does not simply influence mood, it reshapes ambition. When you choose your environment, you choose the pressure that molds you. If that pressure is weak, you become softer. If it is sharp and intentional, you are refined. Solitude interrupts this gradual compromise. It removes the external pressure to conform and exposes you to your unfiltered thoughts. Alone, you are not performing for approval or softening your intensity to maintain harmony. You are confronting yourself without an audience. This confrontation is rarely comfortable, but it is transformative. In silence, you can ask difficult questions without deflection. Am I disciplined or merely busy? Am I progressing or maintaining an illusion of movement? Am I thinking strategically or reacting impulsively? These reflections require stillness because noise offers escape. Constant company provides distraction from self-evaluation. Solitude eliminates that escape route. It demands honesty, it demands courage, and it demands a willingness to be misunderstood by those who equate independence with arrogance. But the clarity gained from this process strengthens internal authority. You begin to rely less on external affirmation and more on internal metrics. That shift from validation to self-assessment is foundational to sustained power. Machiavelli did not advocate hatred or cynicism toward others. He advocated awareness and prudence. The prince must distinguish between alliances that secure stability and those that introduce volatility. This principle translates directly into modern relationships. Constructive individuals challenge you with respect. They elevate discussions beyond triviality. They hold you accountable when you drift from your standards. Corrosive individuals, in contrast, distract you with flattery or trivial drama. They validate weakness to maintain comfort. The difference between these two categories determines trajectory. It determines whether your circle sharpens you or dulls you. Discernment requires observation without sentimentality. Not every pleasant person is beneficial. Not every long-standing relationship remains aligned with your direction. Growth changes dynamics. Awareness allows you to adjust accordingly. Strategic association is not about elitism, it is about alignment. When relationships reinforce discipline and clarity, they become assets. When they consistently undermine focus, they become liabilities. Recognizing this distinction is a sign of maturity, not cruelty. There is a quiet power in being comfortable alone. When solitude does not frighten you, you cannot be manipulated through exclusion. You do not chase invitations or compromise standards to secure belonging. Your independence becomes leverage. Those who fear isolation often tolerate disrespect or mediocrity to avoid it. They remain in draining environments because departure feels like loss. But the individual who has mastered solitude negotiates from strength. They can walk away without desperation. This capacity alters power dynamics in every sphere: professional, social, and personal. Dependence breeds vulnerability. Self-sufficiency breeds resilience. When you no longer require constant affirmation, you become difficult to control. You are guided by vision rather than approval. That stability radiates outward. Others sense it. They recognize that your standards are not flexible under social pressure. In this way, solitude becomes a shield. It protects your direction from emotional manipulation and preserves your autonomy in environments that would otherwise dilute it. Low-value company often resents growth, even if the resentment is subtle. When you evolve, you become a mirror reflecting what others avoid confronting. Your discipline highlights their inconsistency. Your ambition exposes their complacency. This discomfort can manifest as jokes, skepticism, or discouragement, disguised as concern. Rarely will it appear as direct hostility. Instead, it emerges as subtle undermining, questioning your goals, minimizing your efforts, or tempting you back into old patterns. Not all resistance is malicious. Sometimes it is unconscious insecurity. But the effect remains the same. Your progress becomes inconvenient to those invested in familiarity. To preserve their comfort, they attempt to pull you toward their level. Recognizing this dynamic requires emotional intelligence. You must differentiate between constructive critique and covert sabotage. Growth demands selective proximity. If an environment consistently pressures you to regress, strategic withdrawal becomes necessary. Protecting your evolution is not arrogance. It is survival of your highest potential. Cutting off idiots, in a Machiavellian sense, is less about insult and more about discernment. It refers to persistent foolishness that disrupts strategy and consumes attention. Engaging endlessly with individuals committed to ignorance is not noble, it is inefficient. Some arguments are not debates but distractions. Some relationships are not partnerships but drains. Strategic withdrawal is a form of conservation. It preserves mental clarity for pursuits that matter. Machiavelli emphasized efficiency in governance. Eliminate instability before it spreads. In personal life, this means recognizing when dialogue is futile and distance is wiser. Refusing to entertain repeated incompetence communicates boundaries. It signals that your time is reserved for progress, not perpetual correction. This does not require hostility or public declaration. Quiet distance is often more powerful than confrontation. By withdrawing energy from fruitless exchanges, you reclaim focus, and focus, sustained over time, compounds into tangible results that far outweigh temporary social discomfort. Philosophically, solitude has always been intertwined with mastery. Nearly every formidable mind in history has relied on extended periods of isolation to refine vision before executing action. Leaders retreat to strategize. Philosophers withdraw to think clearly. Artists disappear to create without interruption. This pattern is not accidental, it reflects a fundamental truth about concentration. Noise scatters thought. Constant engagement fractures attention into fragments. Solitude, by contrast, consolidates awareness. It allows ideas to deepen rather than remain surface-level reactions to external stimuli. In concentrated silence, plans mature beyond impulse. They are tested internally, revised thoughtfully, and strengthened against foreseeable challenges. Machiavellian insight recognizes that power is not improvised, it is prepared. The individual who can sit alone with a vision, refining it without applause or immediate validation, builds resilience into that vision. They are less likely to abandon it under pressure because it was not constructed for display. Solitude transforms intention into structure, and structure is what sustains power when circumstances shift. Power is maintained through control. control of emotion, perception, and environment. By eliminating low-value influences, you stabilize the variables within your immediate surroundings. Stability reduces unnecessary conflict. Reduced conflict enhances clarity. Clarity increases precision in decision-making. Precision produces measurable results. This sequence may appear simple, but few are willing to endure the discomfort required to initiate it. Cutting ties often triggers misunderstanding. Others may interpret your distance as rejection or superiority. Yet strategic thinking demands prioritizing long-term outcomes over short-term approval. Machiavelli consistently emphasized anticipating consequences rather than reacting emotionally. In your own life, this translates to designing an environment that supports your objectives rather than constantly defending them. When distractions are minimized, emotional volatility decreases. You respond deliberately instead of impulsively. Your reactions become calculated rather than reactive. This composure strengthens your position in every interaction. Over time, a controlled environment fosters disciplined habits, and disciplined habits accumulate into durable. There is also dignity in selective association. Standards, when upheld consistently, communicate strength without verbal proclamation. When you refuse to entertain foolishness or habitual negativity, you signal boundaries. These boundaries function as filters. They repel chaos and attract alignment. High-value individuals recognize discipline instinctively because they operate by it. They are drawn toward environments where seriousness of purpose exists. Your solitude, therefore, is not emptiness. It is calibration. It allows you to curate interactions rather than inherit them. As your circle becomes smaller but stronger, conversations shift from trivial to strategic. Accountability replaces excuse-making. Vision replaces complaint. The reduction in quantity amplifies the quality of connection. This dynamic is not accidental. It is the result of deliberate curation. Over time, your standards become self-reinforcing. Those unwilling to meet them fall away naturally. Those capable of matching them remain. In this way, dignity and discipline quietly reshape your social architecture without unnecessary confrontation. In moments of doubt, it is important to distinguish temporary loneliness from long-term dilution of potential. Loneliness is uncomfortable, but it is transient. Diluted ambition, once normalized, can persist for decades. Machiavellian thinking prioritizes long-range consequences over immediate emotion. It asks not how a decision feels today, but what it produces years from now. What will this association cost in 5 years? Will it sharpen your discipline or soften it? Will it expand your thinking or confine it? If the honest answer is stagnation, then the discomfort of separation becomes rational rather than emotional. Many regret wasted years far more than they regret temporary solitude. The price of careless proximity is often invisible until opportunity has passed. Protecting your trajectory requires foresight. It requires imagining the cumulative effect of daily influences. When evaluated through this lens, strategic isolation appears less extreme and more responsible. It becomes an investment in sustained capability rather than a retreat from connection. Choose solitude when company weakens you. Cut off persistent foolishness without apology, but with composure. Guard your mental territory as a ruler guards his domain, not with paranoia, but with vigilance. You do not need a crowd to be formidable. You need clarity of thought, consistency of discipline, and the courage to walk alone when alignment is absent. In the silence of solitude, strategy sharpens without interference. In the absence of distraction, strength consolidates gradually but powerfully. You become less reactive and more intentional. Your decisions carry weight because they are not shaped by insecurity or peer pressure. Over time, this self-command becomes visible. Others sense the steadiness. They recognize that your standards are not negotiable under social pressure. From that quiet foundation, true power emerges. not measured by volume or popularity, but by control. And control, once established internally, radiates outward into every sphere you choose to influence. This is the Golden Circle Philosophy channel. Like the video, share it with a friend and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching.